This is Kellan Fluckiger. Good morning. It's Saturday morning, or at least here it is Saturday morning on the West Coast and in Phoenix, where I'm broadcasting from. Joining me this morning is George Green, who is my producer, and I am grateful to be on the air with you today for Break the Cage Now. This is my weekly hangout, and the purpose of this hangout is very simple. We live a lot of our lives locked in a cage. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, locked in a cage is buried behind bars and beliefs that limit our opportunity to grow, that prevent us from maximizing our gifts and talents. And often it is necessary to have a catalyst, a key, to unlock the door or break the cage, which is what I always talk about. www.breakthecagenow is the place to go to find out more about breaking the cage. I've got several requests here to put this hangout link in the event page, so I am going to do that. George, could you put the link for the hangout in the event page? Someone's saying no sound or picture, so I don't know. Anyway, so I think we're good. YouTube shows me that we're good, so I'll just go ahead until I find otherwise. I'm grateful for the opportunity to broadcast today and talk about something that is a really serious impediment to many people's improvement and progress, and that is our outlook on life. I've titled the hangout said that we're going to talk about, I didn't title it, but it's about, is the glass full or half empty? Now, we've all heard about that. A pessimist thinks a glass that's half full of water is half empty, and an optimist sees it as half full. That's a metaphor for how we choose to approach life. Okay, so that means when things happen the way they do we see them as a barrier or an opportunity? Do we see that as a problem or a challenge? Do we see it as a negative or a positive? Now, I'll admit there are things that happen that are not fun. So yesterday morning, I just got home from a long meditation and walk, maybe 60, 70 minutes, and I had just come in the house, walked the dogs, and I went outside, or was standing in the doorway, and I'd opened the door because this time of year in Phoenix, it's really pleasant, and you can do that for most of the day. And I'd just taken my shoes off from my walk, and suddenly I heard this terrible bang. A double bang, boom, boom, really loud, really strong, and I didn't have any idea what it was at first. And about 100 yards or a little more is a kind of a main mile road from my house. And suddenly I thought perhaps there had been an accident. And so I threw my shoes back on and I started to go back out there, and I had to walk a bit of a ways because there's a concrete little area for water purification in the front of our subdivision. It blocked my view of the intersection. And I'm not sure why I'm green, but whatever. So I walked over there to see what was wrong, and sure enough, there was it looked like a pretty severe accident. There was smoke coming out of engines, and the bangs had been really, really loud. Now, I'm not suggesting that when things like that happen that you're going to immediately think that there's some positive outcome. I don't know how many people were hurt. I saw a couple of ambulances come. Fire trucks got there very, very quickly. And by the time I got to where I could even see it, there were already a dozen, 10 people milling around with phones and so forth. So I didn't go over there to add to the, didn't want to be a gawker and so forth. But I did notice that a couple of ambulances and several fire vehicles showed up within, 2 or 3 minutes. So right away, help came. But in general, absent those kinds of major upheavals, which happen sometimes, we have a choice every day when we get up. And so the purpose of this hangout is just to examine that choice. Almost no day goes exactly like we want. There are always obstacles and barriers. And we get to choose how we interpret and react to those. So the first question I have is, are you optimistic about your future or pessimistic? And let's talk for a minute about why that matters. This is the glass half full, half empty thing. If you choose to be pessimistic and see the glass as half empty, which you're free to choose, what we tend to focus on when we do that is the things that we're missing. We tend to focus on the things we lack, we do not have, the things that others perhaps have that we're missing, we don't have, or can't seem to get. When we have that mindset on, in my many, many years of coaching, thousands of clients, including my professional career, when we have that mindset, we miss things. We are so focused on what we do not have that we miss seeing or perceiving or making the conceptual moves in our mind to capture opportunities that are right before us. So the bottom line is the pessimistic view or the half-empty view is self-reinforcing. We miss opportunities to improve or increase our opportunity or situation, and consequently the glass is even a little emptier than it was a moment ago. On the other hand, if you choose to have an optimistic view, if you choose to look at the glass half full, the chemistry in your brain is different. So this is not just mindset mumbo jumbo where you think positive and all stuff is good, although there is science behind that. You simply see more opportunity because you're looking for opportunity. You're looking because you perceive the base situation as a positive one. It's half full. I have part of what I want. I'm on my way to more. I'm in the process of doing that. And therefore you see opportunities that you would completely miss otherwise. I certainly have seen this manifest in my life and my business and my executive career many times. When I approached a situation looking for a way to solve the problem, we found one. When I approached the situation feeling like we're dead, we were dead. And so it is simply a matter of creating the expectation. One of the ways psychologists talk about that is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a studied and scientific thing that means we find what we look for. We find what we look for. One funny example of that is that you don't see a certain car of a certain color. You go buy that brand in that color and suddenly it's everywhere. And it's like, did everybody go buy one of my car? And the answer is, yep, not really. They already were there. You didn't see them before because you weren't looking. And after you own it, then you're looking for it because you desperately want that exclusivity of being the only one with XYZ car in that color. Now, I suppose if the car you buy is one they only made 2 of, then probably you won't do that. But for the most part, we do it, and we do it with a lot of different things. So that's the first piece I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to stress, now that we've talked about the effects of choosing to look at something in a positive or negative way, let's talk about choice. Choice is the fundamental gift that we all have. Divine gift. It is inherent in our nature. We do not choose when we're born who our parents are. We don't choose what color our eyes are. And we don't choose the physical genetic code that we come with. But most of the rest of life we choose. And certainly when we've grown up to at least have a sense of what choice is, we begin making choices. And as it always is, the outcomes, excuse me, the outcomes of those choices enforce themselves. So, for example, if we are regularly rude to people, the outcome of that is that people don't want to be around us. If we are regularly polite and friendly, because we choose that outlook, we're pleasant to be around and we'll make friends easily. Those are naturally enforced consequences. Some consequences are selectively enforced. If you speed, sometimes you get caught. Most often, probably you don't. So sometimes that gives us the sense, not just speeding, but those selectively enforced consequences, that you can get away with anything. I've said myself, and I've heard other people talk about cheating death, meaning having been in a physically dangerous situation, and sometimes extreme, where you could have died or perhaps should have, and you didn't, and so it wasn't your time. So people say they cheated death, and sometimes that gives us the sense that the principle of choice is not really universally true. But let me tell you that it is. The fact that our consequences accrue and are reflected in us at some point is simple fact. One illustration of that was that story by Nathaniel Hawthorne about the portrait of Dorian Gray. It was a magic picture of a fellow, a portrait, a beautiful portrait, and he went on to live a life of riotous living. And, you know, in the description there, late night, smoking, drinking, partying, doing all the things that wreck your health. And instead of him getting to look old and haggard and busted, the picture got old and haggard and busted. And it was the effects of his life were reflected in the picture. And then one day something happened and the picture was destroyed, and immediately all of those consequences transferred to him. So he'd been in a state of suspended consequence for a moment. The reason this is important is simply that we are mindful, we are aware, we take responsibility for making a choice. You can choose whether or not you're optimistic or pessimistic. You can choose whether or not your life is half full or half empty. You can choose whether or not to make the most of an opportunity that you have, whatever job you have, whatever situation you have, or you can choose to lament and be angry and frustrated and complain to the gods and whoever isn't listening about the unfairness of life and your situation, which generally results in a lot of hot air but not a lot of result. So let's take just a moment here. We've got a couple of folks here, my producer George and Rick Tashma, who's joined us in the film strip. In terms of viewing things as half full or half empty, and the choice, the opportunity we have for choice in that regard, do you guys have any comments or examples that you'd like to share that illustrate this principle?
Exactly, Kellan. My experience, myself and with my client partners, is quite simply, when we have a negative narrative, when we're doing what I call subtraction rather than addition and multiplication, it takes us first and foremost out of the focus of our job, what's in front of us, what are we taking care of. And two, when we're shifting into not only being present to where we are and what we're doing, but to be present to the opportunities, which is the glass is half full, is an invitation for us to be in a state of gratefulness and focus at the same time. Personally, I find when I remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing, my purpose, my greater purpose, and I connect into the possibilities of fulfillment, or the glass half full, I am always noticing new opportunities springing up everywhere.
Well, thank you. I totally agree, and I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. We know for sure that if we are negative, we won't see the opportunity. And if something turns around, it is a bit of a haphazard circumstance. Now, I have an equation that I use when I teach in my breakthrough work. I call it the life equation, and it's a graph sort of matrix, and I won't take time to explain that here because we've got 30 minutes. But it's powerful when it talks about the choices that we have, choice to be committed or not committed, and the choice that we have to be clear or not clear, and stay focused and in the moment and present to the opportunities. The clock is going to tick either way. You know, the day's going to go by, the hours pass, the sun comes up and goes down, and the time that you're allotted and that I'm allotted is going to go by either way. The choice, the precious gift of choice that we have, is to do the most or the least with that 24 hours, or to do the most or the least with any opportunity, to repair or to allow to contract a relationship or a situation that we find ourselves in. So that's the first piece about choosing, exercising the choice to live half full or half empty. The next piece that I wanted to talk about, I sort of titled this, well, what if the glass is in fact empty? I'm not naive enough to think that we ever go through our lives without some severe periods of feeling like, or perhaps actually finding the glass empty or nearly empty. If we go through a tremendous health challenge, or we're suddenly faced with the end of a relationship that we weren't expecting, or we choose to end a relationship and it ends up being messy and controversial and contentious and a lot of anger and fighting and wasted resource and, you know, perhaps lying and lawyers and all that sort of thing. Or you suddenly find yourself out of a job and it came unexpectedly, or you suddenly have an accident and you're lost, you know, time and you're in health. That happened to me a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. I was out walking a dog one morning and suddenly I started having all the symptoms of a heart attack except no pain. like you have chest pain. I had no pain, but I was short of breath, and it was weird because I'm in pretty good shape, and I ride often 20, 30, 40 miles on a bicycle, and take long walks, and just, I'm in pretty decent shape. This didn't make any sense to me, but I was extremely tired and was short of breath, and so I came in the house, thought, this is ridiculous. I'll just lay down, take a little nap. So I did, and it didn't go away, and I ended up then just going about my day, but I had to lay down on the floor in the studio, and I was in the studio doing some music. And I finally thought, you know what, this is weird. I'm going to go to bed tonight, and if it's still not like this tomorrow, I'm going to go see the doctor. So long story short, I went to the doctor, and he said I had something. My heartbeat had gone completely irregular, and it was way too fast. And the atrial fibrillation, and my heart was out of control. So they put me in the hospital instantly. So from one day to the next, I found myself 911 in the hospital for about 10 days. Complete shock, never been in the hospital before, never been busted, nothing happened. Boom. And so there I laid, and I thought, I think this was 2012, 11, I don't know, but either in 11 or 12 in March. And so I was there for 10 days, and I got the opportunity to think about priorities and to think about things. And it was certainly unexpected, and it certainly threw a kink in my wrench, or a wrench in my machinery, or a kink in my plans, because I had no expectation of that, and nothing that I had prepared in my life had, went through that road. So it gave me the opportunity. I wasn't dying. In fact, they had put me on some, junk like they do, and they were going to do a jump start after a while, and they put me on medication for a while and got rid of some clots and did some stuff. And ultimately, they did a jump start on me with the shock paddles and so forth, and it fixed everything. And after a month or two, I was given a treadmill test and all that stuff, given a clean bill of health. Go live your life, go exercise, go do whatever you want. So it was repaired. But during the time that it was happening, I did not know what was going to happen. The heart regulation medicine, they have some kind of powerful meds that are supposed to do that shock with chemicals instead of with the electric shock, which is the last resort sort of thing, a jump start kind of thing. And so for a period of time, I had to contemplate, the possibilities and situation that might bring up. I expect those people that had the accident yesterday, the ones that were hurt, and the families of the ones that were hurt are in that situation right now, not knowing what's going to happen or how long it's going to last. And so they find themselves in a situation where the glass truly feels empty. And it's not about half or half, it's just totally bomb. So what do we do? What do we do? Well, the first thing is you don't have to pretend that it's not. The feelings of, this is terrible, or I'm really sad or hurt or abandoned or in a bad way are normal, and we don't have to pretend them away. Okay, we deal with them. What I choose to do in those situations, after I have a space for grieving or being upset about what's going on or whatever, is I choose to step back and then take stock of what really is. So this is what I did. I said, okay, I'm not dead. I could be dead. My doctor told me that I could be dead, but I'm not. Okay. So I'm here in the hospital, best place I could be in terms of getting this fixed. So what's really going on? Well, I don't have to sleep all the time, although I'm tired a lot. I can do this. I put a list of things out that I could do. This is an enforced time of opportunity to think and to do some beneficial things. So I went through and made a list of those kinds of things, and I did a lot of work on paper and planning and writing and other things that I could be done. So what I chose to do is to simply step back, take stock of what actually was, be grateful, like George mentioned earlier, be grateful for what was still true, meaning I was alive. The prognosis wasn't grim. The prognosis was guarded, but okay, and I was likely to recover. In what state, I didn't know if I was going to be on meds forever or whatever, but I was going to probably recover. I was grateful for all those things, and I chose, basically what I'm saying is to start adding things to the glass, one drop at a time. My other alternative would have been to yell at the bottom of the empty glass. My other alternative would have been to be angry and bitter at everyone around me, or the doctors, or my family, or anyone who came to visit. I could have chosen that, and some do. But when my glass was empty, I just took stock and said, what do I still have? What can I do in this situation So let's start filling the glass a drop at a time. And that's easy to say. It's difficult to do. And so my advice and true counsel there is to get some help. Find someone to talk to, express the rage and frustration, and then let it go. Take true stock of where you are, be grateful for what you still have, and then plan to add to it a drop at a time. So that's the thought that I have about that particular section. Number two, what I'd like to do now is also invite comment of those that are in the group here. If there's anything to add, I like to do that after each point so that we have some other views and thoughts about situations where perhaps you found your glass empty or been involved with someone else who found it suddenly empty, and the process, either good or bad, that happened afterwards. And if it's a bad outcome in terms of someone chose never to look at it, it's interesting to discuss and note the consequences to that life and those lives around them of choosing to take that negative point of view. Comments?
I noticed, Kellan, that I live an optimistic life, and I also notice that sometimes my glass is less than half full, and sometimes there's barely anything in there, but I still have hope, and the hope is what keeps me going. Because if I didn't have hope that today, not just tomorrow, but today is going to be a better day than yesterday was, or at least as good as yesterday was, then I would certainly spiral down into a place where there'd be no possibility of recovery. So that's nice.
Thank you. Well, that's interesting because, as most of you know, I want to issue a couple of invitations here at this point before we move on to number three. As most of you know, I had planned this topic some time ago, but as most of you know, I've launched a project on Kickstarter called Tightrope of Depression. I'm going to put the link in the event page. If you haven't looked at that, I would encourage you to look at that. My Kickstarter project, Tightrope of Depression. I've written a book. It will be out in early next year. I will be doing an official launch and so forth, and it's in editing right now. But it's about my own personal journey. In my situation, I was raised in a very strict environment with a lot of negativity about never being good enough, never being acceptable, everything being short of perfect and therefore not okay, and a lot of physical enforcement and negative things in that regard. It left me with a constant feeling of not being good enough and never being able to do that. For the last 30 years or so, it's difficult to say, I've struggled on and off with depression, sometimes very, very severely, and it's caused me to have a lot of really exciting ups and downs, high successes and terrible crashes. And in that regard, seeing the glass half full and half empty has made a huge difference. And as Rick mentioned about spiraling out of control, I certainly understand both how that feels and how it also feels to smash into the rocks. I sometimes joke about getting my office executive chair pushed out of the 34th story of the building and landing on the pavement, splat, and that's one of the sort of visuals I use to give a description of one of the situations. So it is critical. The second invitation, so that first one is Kickstarter, Tightrope of Depression. I'll put the link in the event page. The second one is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. These broadcasts go on my YouTube channel. And if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do, because there's 3 Hangouts a week. One has to do with breaking the cage. One has to do with something I call Results on a Rampage on Tuesdays, and then Speed to Profit Marketing, which really is about learning how to put your message in front of people, whether you're a message or a business, but it's really focused mostly on entrepreneurs. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's go to the third one. And the third one is, I talked about finding your true purpose. Now, there's lots of ways out there that people talk about finding your passion and living your passion and making money and making a living out of making your passion, and do what you love and the money will follow is the name of a book. And there's a couple of friends of mine who've written the Passion Test, Janet and Chris Atwood, and they speak on that, and they have a particular test to go through how you do a process to find out what your top 3 or 5 passions are and so forth. But regardless of the method, the notion of being driven by something you want to do is really important. 20, 50, 100, 1,000 years ago, it was really difficult to do something that was far away and out of the sort of box of your geographic location. Today, with the internet, with travel being like it is, with being literally globally connected, and with the education and information being basically free, information online is free, all of that's available. With those huge changes and opportunities, the boundaries and limitations about what you can do have been exploded. Some people still live, as I talked in the beginning, sort of locked in a cage, locked in fear of taking the step, taking the leap, making a move, and breaking that cage, creating confidence, choosing to liberate your motivation to make things happen is a key first step. But the tools and opportunities have never been greater. I get questions all the time from clients or prospects discussing, coaching with me about, is it going to work? Can I do this now? Is this really possible? Isn't the market saturated? And a whole bunch of similar questions that all really sound like, I'm afraid to do this, what if I can't? Now, no one can plaster on anyone's forehead a guarantee of success. But what I can tell you for sure is the opportunity has never been greater than it is right now. Your reach is global. Your ability to express yourself through the internet, like this Hangout, YouTube, internet marketing, the availability and opportunity you have to blog, and to create videos, and to put your opinion out there, and to learn a few marketing skills so that people can find you who are looking for you, because it is crowded. But if you do the right things, you can certainly be found. Those opportunities have never been greater. And so the call to find your true purpose by whatever method, I'm not going to espouse a particular method of finding it, but this is a call in seeing the glass half full and finding a driver in life that will sustain you through ups and downs. Often we think of money as the great motivator, but even in surveys at work and in massive employment situations, I say massive because big companies, money is not the primary motivator. Status is far higher than that. Challenging work, being challenged in your intellectual opportunities is higher motivation. There are a number of motivations. Money is not even second or third. It's down the list a little ways. And so creating money is certainly required. We have to eat, we have to pay rent, we have to be able to do the things to get along, but it is not, by and large, the largest motivator. So creating the thing that you have passion to do and that you're good at, and then choosing to find the opportunities to make that happen is the hallmark of someone who is liberating their motivation, who is breaking the cage that keeps them believing that they can't have a life full of opportunity, that keeps them focused on the empty part of the glass instead of adding drop by drop to the water that's already there. And a choice to add drop by drop to the water that's already there is the liberating choice. It is the intelligent choice. It is the bold choice. It is the empowering choice. And it is also the choice that allows you to be the best you can be, to provide the most service to others. So many people say, well, I want to help others. Well, you know what? Start adding one drop at a time to the glass you have, however full it is. One drop at a time. Make those choices. Get the help you need. Always, I say, there are 3 things required to achieve any outcome. You need a bulletproof commitment. You need clarity about exactly what it is, and then you need a coach that will help you liberate your motivation and guide the application of that motivation so you can get to your goal in the quickest, most effective way possible. All right, I'm done with the prepared material for today, and I would encourage you to dig to your heart and see who you are, what you stand for, and what you want to be, and then create a way to make that happen instead of living an excuse about why you can't. Choose to break the cage. Before I end today, I'm going to check and see if either of our panelists have an additional comment or thought to add to this, and thank George for producing the show for me, and Rick for showing up today to visit as well. Either of you guys want to throw in a comment here at the end?
I would just say thank you for doing this, Kellan, and especially for your invitation just now. We all have moments where we're having to traverse what I call the valley of the shadow: depression, anxiety, difficulty, challenge. And often we feel like we need to be superhuman to overcome that. It really takes a single step, and one step after that, as you say, add a drop to your glass. Little by little, we move upscale, and we move out of the shadow and back into the light of our heart, our love, and our intention. So I absolutely agree. I'm grateful to be here with you. And for those who are watching and or are in the replay, I've gone ahead and dropped the link into the comment stream for our Kickstarter campaign. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Join us next. Rick, you have anything you want to add? No? All right. I see a shake. Good deal. Join us next week, again, as we're going to have another episode of Break the Cage Now.